Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are itching for this regular season to start. But while we wait, we still have plenty of futures to bet on, Nate, including what we're going through in this video to make playoffs. So basically going to look at a bunch of DraftKings odds for teams to make the playoffs versus not make the playoffs. There's a few here that are at least worth considering, and a few here that we just want to talk about how many good teams there are in the East and why all these other teams are just not making the playoffs over the top 8 seeds, who I think we can probably solidify. All that said, there's a few other fun things in here as well that on DraftKings that we do want to make sure you check out. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That is where you can find all the great written content that Nate and the gang continue to leave up there for you guys, and have our great odds finder tool so you can make sure you are shopping all of those NBA lines to the best of your ability, including all of these preseason bets that we're making, Nate, as the preseason does roll along and we are embarking upon the start of the season. So some of these to make playoff bets. Your favorite one, I got to imagine, and really honestly my favorite one as I look at these options, the Chicago Bulls, plus 110 for them not to make the playoffs. And I'll just say right off the bat, you listed the 8 teams that we think will make the playoffs. I mean, you think, I definitely think Milwaukee, Philly, Boston, Miami, Brooklyn, Cleveland, Atlanta, Toronto. I'm not saying the Bulls are terrible. Love Billy D, love DD. He was probably our player props player of the year last year for NBA Coast to Coast. That said, all 8 of those teams are much better than their team. So plus 110 to not make the playoffs is reasonable, right?
Yeah, I mean, they hit the tank last year. It was 19-25 after January 12th, losing Lonzo Ball early in the season, losing Caruso for much of the season, played a factor in that. We don't know if Lonzo Ball is ever going to get back out on the court at this point. I mean, he's like trending towards Brandon Roy territory, degenerative knees, and you hate to see it. But yeah, I mean, they're not going to be the same team without him.
No.
Even
and his athleticism, right? It's a guy they're relying on his athleticism big time.
Right. That's the only way they came out of the gate the way they did last year is him and Caruso just hounding opposing backcourts. Even if you run that back in some way and simulate them being at full strength, I still don't like the Bulls to be better than any of those 8 teams. I think they'll be in the play-in tournament. Yeah. And I don't think that they can beat good teams with their backs against the wall. In fact, we saw that when they lose 15 of their last 16 games against teams with winning records. I mean, there's just not much here to like, and there is a lot to like about the East. We talked about in the other video, there's not really any tanking teams at this point. Even the young and up-and-coming teams like the Magic and the Pistons are going to be outgunning for wins on a nightly basis. And every team has a shot to beat the Bulls. I mean, if DeRozan takes even a modicum of a step back, then they're sunk. Sadly, I don't think Lonzo's going to be able to come back and help them much. So I wouldn't even really.
Well, and to your DD point though, real quick, there's no way he doesn't take a step back, because to be honest, taking a step back doesn't even mean he's going to be bad. It just means he's coming back down to earth from a season in which he just had these 12 game streaks of scoring 35 a game.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's not sustainable. So anyway, I finish your point about Chicago. I didn't want to interrupt too bad.
No, it's all good. Yeah, I'm just saying if he takes even a modicum of a step back, I don't think they have a chance. And the fact that they're the biggest favorite to be in the play-in tournament here in the East, where we look at some of those fun odds, I'm not even that sure about that, to be honest. I mean, to be in the 10th spot, I think the Knicks, if things fall right, the Knicks could be ahead of them. Never know with the Wizards or the Hornets, but I mean, no, I'm out on the Hornets, but
no,
I don't think the Bulls are winning any games in the play-in tournament. That's my take.
I think you're right. I think that play-in tournament's going to be stacked. I mean, look, let's say we just named you the 8 teams that are better than them. So let's say they get the 9 seed, although, like you said, there's only 10 seeds for this play-in. And, are they that much better than the Knicks this season? Are they that much better? They're better than the Wizards. Yeah, they're that much better than them. So they're at worst they're a 10th seed, right? And so
I don't know with the Wizards,
but 9 or 10 seed. No, I'm not touching that. But 9 or a 10 seed with with every team we just said here. 9 or a 10 seed, them and the Knicks. That's what you expect to happen. And then some combo of Cleveland, Atlanta, Toronto gets 7-8, right? And Toronto, I don't know. I like Toronto, but let's say like Cleveland, Atlanta, right? 7-8. So like, can the Bulls win one game? Yes, but like that's what we're saying is like their best chance here to make the playoffs is that they fight for a top 7 through 10 seed and really like 9 or 10 seed, and then they go ahead and surprise win 2 games. I'm taking that at plus 10 for sure. I really just dislike the make of them as soon as the regular season ended. And it was just like, look, man, DeMar did his thing, dude, but it's the playoffs now. And he's not going to be getting 35 points against, these Rudy Poo defenses that he's been doing this against. So, that's a pretty easy bet. I love a lot of players on that team, but they're not going to be able to make up for that lack of defense. Kobe White ain't it, by the way. I think we've established that. I don't think he's going to be a prolific scorer in the NBA. He'll just be an occasional swingman 3, hit a 3 off your bench at like 8 minutes a game kind of guy. So I think that's what he's turning into in the NBA. But let's transition to my New York Knickerbockers. Minus 195 to not make the playoffs. Do we really need to talk about that? Like, are you going to put money on that? You might. I think it's pretty much a guarantee. I do. But plus 105 to be in the play-in. So that makes me wonder. Plus 105 to be in the play-in. We're saying that their season comes down to winning 1 or 2 games. Minus 195 to just not make the playoffs at all. That doesn't seem worth it, right? At that point.
No, I think it's much better value to take them to be in the play-in, because as we're trying to list a couple teams that could jump the Bulls or something, we ran out of names. Like there's nobody else in the East that we would expect to actually be able to finish in the 10th spot. Although, like the Pistons and the Magic, like I said, they're going to be frisky. The Pacers, if they hold on to their guys, they're going to be frisky too. But I think the difference between the Knicks and sort of the funk that they got into last year will be Jalen Brunson and just being a stabilizing force, being a force of leadership for a team that finished 26th in scoring, that was so dependent on Derrick Rose, who of course was going to get injured at some point. Between Kemba and Derrick Rose to run your team, you're obviously in trouble. And they forked up the money for Brunson. He's not the splashiest acquisition, but he's going to be a real solidifying force. And hopefully, RJ Barrett continues to take a leap forward after they invested in him. There's spots to go around here, and you certainly don't have to worry about them finishing higher than 7th because they peaked 2 years ago. There's no way in the East that they're going to do that well. So I think, for them to get in the 10th or 9th spot here seems like a pretty good bet at even money.
There's no more room. There's no more room in the East for a team like the Knicks to get a 4 or 5 seed even, right? That's not it. Playing though, like it's not even just who they got, it's also who they lost that I like, and like, no, I say no disrespect intended after saying something super disrespectful, but lost Alec Burks, lost Taj Gibson, lost Nerlens Noel, lost Kemba Walker. Some Knicks fans would tell you, oh no, we lost Taj and Nerlens, like that was rim protection. Well, Taj is 37 and Nerlens was never on the court, so irrelevant. I don't care about that. They needed to get younger. They needed to get, springier, right? A few more guys with some hops to the likes of, Obi Toppin. I also love the pickup of Isaiah Hartenstein. And I'll tell you, any Cavs fan will tell you that they hate it. That was a guy that brought a lot of great minutes all over the place. I think people in Denver will still tell you that they hate that he's not a Nugget because you've got a guy who rebounds really well, boxes out, can guard the 5, and hits threes and stretches the floor. So he's never really a decompressant to your offense. So I really like all of those pickups. And I think that, 40 games is super doable in an East where, I do think there's games to be won. Now, all of that said, I didn't have the chutzpah, if you will, to say like, when we were listing teams about Chicago, who could jump them. All we said was the Knicks. And I think that's very feasible and not necessarily likely, but super feasible. That's where it ends, because as much as I want to throw out a team like the Detroit Pistons, I'm not talking about the Wizards. I think the Pacers are a team that I don't know if they're going to tank or not. We do need to consider, the win for Victor kind of, suck for Victor kind of the marathon that will be this year after watching him go off Wembanyama, that I'll get to say his name right by the beginning of the season, I promise. But either way, there's just no more teams to go around. And that brings us real quick to the Hornets. I really, really don't want to spend too much time on them, but there's no way they're making the playoffs. That's why it's at minus 425.
Yeah, and that's not a bet to make, but we are looking at, right now they're off the board for the conference seeding, which is interesting because I think the Miles Bridges situation is still a bit up at the air. Without him, I mean, they're starting to look awfully thin. A lot of injury-prone guys, a real freewheeling system under LaMelo Ball, and a franchise that could easily, start to throw games or trade guys away and start to look for Victor. The total is 33.5. I know they trolled a lot of people by winning 40 some odd games, getting over that total last year and getting into the play-in, but I don't think that's happening this year. They could wind up as one of the 2 or 3 worst teams in the East, and that's why I would keep an eye out for that conference seeding number.
I mean, when they fired their head coach last year, and it was like, come on, man, that ain't it, right? That almost seemed like it was a move for getting ready to tank this year, to be honest. And so all of it just leads to, why would you try to win more than 33 games this year if you're the Hornets? That's really the only bet to take with them. So unfortunate that I don't think LaMelo is going to be, they're not going to be a league pass team, especially without high flying, Miles Bridges. So let's move on to a team that is going to be very fun to talk about. And these last 2 teams are going to be very fun. This one is the Pelicans. They're going to be fun to talk about. They're for sure going to be a league pass team this year. They're going to score a lot of points. I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to score the most points in the league this year, but like the odds for them to do so are super awesome. So I might consider grabbing that on DraftKings as well, as I could see them being a high flying and scoring team all season. So for them to make the playoffs is -165. For them not to do so is +130. We talked about in our other video, which was the conference seeding 7.5. I briefly just brought it up because I like the under there. I think they can get a top 7 seed in that West. The list of powerhouses sort of slows down in the West a lot faster than it does in the East. When you say Phoenix, they're going to take a step back. Memphis. Golden State, I'm still high on them. Dallas, I think they're going to be about the same. Utah's all the way back. Denver, probably between a 6 and 4 seed, somewhere around there. Minnesota taking a huge step up. The Clippers taking a huge step up. So that's now a very, very crowded West. But still, the Pellies, -165 to make it, or not to make it at +130 for you?
They're a playing team for me. I think that's where I would bet. I don't want to bet against them winning playing games because of what we saw last year and them gaining that momentum. This starting lineup is just absolutely filthy. I don't think anyone would want to see that in a 1-game format. But I think we're overrating as far as their ability to jump into the top of the West. Overrating Zion, and he's a great offensive player, but he's a negative on defense. And even his ability to play on offense, we don't know how that's going to gunk up the works between the mojo CJ and BI had going last year. And Joe Val had a career year as well. There's a lot more unknown here. They're a team that I could see slipping more than I could see moving up. By the way, CJ looked like he got completely out of shape this offseason. So we'll see how that goes if he's going to be the same kind of guy. But the last team in the West to look at here as a total
real quick, before you go too far past it, the last thing I would say about New Orleans too is just that's why they're so fun, is both of these storylines could potentially play out, right? Which is like, are they going to have their sort of chemistry disrupted by Zion's presence, or are they just going to turn into this wildly impressive offense, especially offense, that they can sort of make up for a lack of defense at times because of that offense. So, but yeah, that last team that you want to talk about, the Blazers.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about offense and the odds to lead the league in scoring. We like, looking at some of the underdogs there at DraftKings. The Wolves are the favorite at +120, and then everyone else has a lot of juice. And the Blazers at +8,000. The reason I like that more than the Pelicans is because I don't think the Blazers are going to be able to play a lick of defense. With Jeremy Grant coming on, this is a team that was 30th, 29th, 28th in defense the last 3 years. Jeremy Grant's defensive rating has gone up each of the last 3 years. They're now going to be playing Anthony Simons and Dame together in the backcourt. That's going to be incredible for offense, terrible for their defense. Their bigs, Nurkic and Winslow, are extremely injury prone. And you look at, before Dame missed a year, they were third in offense or third or better for 3 straight years. So that's with Dame and CJ. Now they just have a second kind of star guard next to him. I like what Shaedon Sharp's going to be able to do. That is all to say, +8,000 is a long shot for a reason. What we're looking at here is them to make the playoffs, and I say no at -180. I think that's a pretty good lock right there. I know Damian Lillard is not a guy you want to bet against in a one-off, but we don't expect them to get the 7 or 8. So for the Blazers to beat two really good teams in that one-off situation with all those defensive concerns that I just raised, I really don't see that happening.
We haven't even talked about the Lakers, and I didn't want to bring them up. I don't want to talk about them, but I'm just reading a list of teams that I think are better than Portland, and I do still think they're better than Portland. Like, I'm a huge Laker hater, not because like I don't like the franchise. I just don't like that amalgamation of players on the same team expected to win games. And I've been saying this, I don't know for how many years, 5, 4. Since he was on the Rockets, it was like, Russ is a net negative to your team. Please don't tell me about his stats. He's a net negative.
Catching strays.
Yeah. So I don't want to hear
talking about the Blazers dumping on Westbrook.
I'm sorry, man. But it's still, I'm sorry. This was supposed to be me making a point that they are still better than the Blazers. And I do still think that they're better than the Blazers. But as far as making the playoffs, minus 180, that's still enough juice for me to actually bet it. Because, look, the thing you're scared of at the end of the day for that would be Dame, if they make the play-in, could win one game against anybody because he can score 60 whenever he wants. You got to wonder if you're getting the same Dame, though. And I think all the question marks around what this team could look like ceiling-wise, that ceiling is pretty high. That floor is also very, very low, I would say. But if one injury occurs, like just one, and if it's not even Dame, right, between one of him and then Jeremy Grant and Simons, Nurkic, look, I don't know, you got to pencil him in for missing 30 games, I think, pretty much per season. So really, now you're really thin in your front court once again.
And fouling out of 10 more.
Or just fouling out and more. And having his random amazing game against Jokic to battle them, that huge white battle that they have. But at any rate, that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. We are just itching to get closer to the NBA season, have actual games to talk about. I know we'll be coming at you guys each and every weekday of the regular season with at least 3 or so games, depending on that slate that we're picking, and those NBA player props as well. So until we see you next, happy betting.